Hi there. Today is going to be a recording of a presentation PowerPoint that was put together by myself, Danelle Mercer, PPS specialist, and Jeannie Medina, PBIS coordinator. The title of today's presentation is Using Data for Storytelling, How to Effectively Use the RAD form for SST. Okay, so to introduce myself, I'm Danelle Mercer. I am a PPS specialist. I work within our district department of People Personnel Services, and I work and serve the school counselors throughout the district, both at the middle school and high school and our alternative ed sites.
And I'm Jeannie Medina. I'm the PBIS coordinator for the district, and I coach the PBIS teams on our school sites.
So to give you a little bit of information about Pupil Personnel Support Services and who we are and what we do, the Pupil and Personnel Support Services Department aims to create a supportive and effective educational environment by addressing the counseling and behavioral support needs. The SUHSD mission statement is guided by educational equity, and through innovation, discovery, and support, the SUHSD will meet the academic, behavioral, and social emotional needs of each student to ensure achievement of their aspirations. So this would have been on today's agenda, but just to go over, not so much the time frame, but we were anticipating having the participants and they would sign in, and then we're going to start off with an overview of what an SST framework looks like and what that means for our sites. And then we're going to talk about the role of the teacher in all of this and introduce that form, that RAD SST form. And then we don't have feedback, but we're going to actually explain it in the way of, okay, if this were executed like this, is like some possible ways of getting feedback on this particular topic. So coming together, a quote, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a process, working together is success. Edward Everett Hill. And go ahead.
Our student success teams on our school sites follow an MTSS approach that involves a process: evaluate, define, analyze, and implement, that includes the domains of the academic, social, emotional, and behavioral health domains, with layers of support of Tier 1, a differentiated core; Tier 2, strategic support based on data; and Tier 3, which is more intensive.
Okay, to pause, and we just went ahead and started, and we're going to continue on with this next slide. But if you are just joining, the sign-in link is in the chat, and we are recording this session to share out with our other educators. So to get into this idea of SST, Student Success Team, starting off with a little bit of a layer of foundation to get your mind more so onto this topic. So SST foundations kind of reestablished. And the SSTs are school-based problem-solving teams utilized to review lack of academic progress, behavioral concerns, attendance, truancy issues, parent or teachers, that's where you guys come in, concerns, and to recommend alternative strategies, interventions to be implemented in the regular classroom. As such, student success teams are a function of general education. So going into a little bit more so of like the teacher aspect of this process. So SST, classroom teacher role expectations. Classroom teacher provides support for the referring party and submits the classroom information sheet to the SST coordinator. To stop and elaborate on an SST coordinator, that's who your site has identified to coordinate this process. And it can be a counselor, it can be an intervention specialist. But yeah, so that would be also to know on your site who conducts that process for you all. And then they define student strengths, identification of areas of concern. They shares interventions attempted over a period of time, gathers information, data regarding the student, and supports SST plan and identified interventions. So this is an illustration of a flow chart, and this is something that Ms. Medina and myself had been working on last year. And really, we started off with those school counseling teams and interventions, those SST identified individuals as coordinators. And we did a flow chart of like, okay, where do you guys start off and then go through. We also tied in this approach, which was shared on the previous slide, of kind of doing like this tiered approach, MTSS, and kind of tying it all together. So this is a section of that flow chart, because we did receive a lot of feedback and we're working on that, and that's going to be our goal for this upcoming year, is really defining what that looks like and the fidelity of it. But for specifically working with and addressing teachers, kind of starting here, like receiving that tier 1 universal and class-wide supports, and then kind of going off to either, you do some more tier 2 team reviews, universal data to locate learners that may have additional needs, social, emotional, behavioral, attendance, and academics. And that kind of goes with your peers and kind of really identifying those needs. Or it's going to kind of go more towards this SST route, which is more so on the right hand end. It's the request for assistance is made to the cost team. And so these cost team members, individuals, meet together as an intervention tiered approach to support students at a deeper level. And so that cost team reviews the request for assistance. And that could either go into more coaching and then kind of going back to the cost team loops in the teacher to provide support, or it's going to proceed more with like the SST and really finding what the needs are. The Child Finding Mandate, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA, includes that child find requirement. Child find requires that all students, all school districts, there we go, to identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities regarding the severity of their disability. And then Medina, we do have a question.
Micah has a question. Go ahead, Micah.
Hi, yes. I'm just trying to clarify. This is just for tier 1 and tier 2, right?
We have that demonstrated here, but it can, so I would say tier 1 and tier 2 in the form of like delivery and access to the student, and not so much like looking at, oh, this is just a tier 1 behavior or tier 2 behavior or tier 3, but looking more so as like access and intervention.
Okay.
And so the tier 3 layer, which is not illustrated in this particular one, but on the other one that we have when we're working with coordinators, that's when you're really going into, okay, there's clearly a need with this student. We're doing SSTs, and there's like a timeline that needs to be followed and follow up SST. And then if they needs to proceed to going into more of an extensive evaluation that falls under like an IEP, and seeing if they no longer needs are not being met in the general ed setting, but going into maybe more of the individual education plan IEP with disability setting. But good question.
Micah, were you asking about the presentation itself or about this process?
No, about this process. Yes. I just, yeah.
Well, SSTs are technically the gateway that happens after this, right? And so if we would want to make sure that the student has received and has been guaranteed all tier 1 supports, and that they have been given the opportunity to have tier 2 supports in order to give them the most liberation possible. If they did come into our class or onto our school site with a diagnosis already, then we could bypass using the child find mandate instead of going through this whole process to an SST.
Awesome.
Okay,
awesome.
Cool.
Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
And feel free to keep asking questions as we go through this, our participant.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so then starting off with another quote, an identity would seem to be arrived at by the way in which the person faces and uses his experience. James Baldwin.
Experience shapes what we do as teachers, but it also shapes what our students do as young adults. And so the teacher's input is part of this bigger picture, that same MTSS model. And it really focuses on what previous experience they have, whether that's in college or whether or not they have taught at another school or whether or not they have been a member of our district for a period of time. But it really focuses on that early intervention. In this role, it is our true duty to advocate for our students from start to finish. Mm-hmm. We are also charged with leveraging team knowledge and skills. So if I find as a referring teacher that somebody on my team has the knowledge and or skills to support this student, I am working to leverage that for them. I'm also working to maintain that home to school bond because we want students and their families to remain engaged. I will also make sure that it stays strength-based, that when it veers off the path into our deficits, that we try to quickly realign ourselves, that things are culturally relevant. The teacher always knows more about the student. They know the nuances, they know the relationships they have in their lives, they know just the smallest of details, and so that they are the keeper of those culturally relevant practices in many cases, not in all cases, because I know some teachers do lack that knowledge. They also are in charge of implementing evidence-based interventions. So whatever comes about in those meetings, they are responsible for implementing them. And we just can't choose random things to intervene with. We have to choose things that we've decided upon and that are evidence-based, that actual produce outcomes. Then we continuously monitor the progress. We don't monitor the progress for one day, for 1 week, but we continue as long as that student's case remains active. We are committed to adjusting our strategies when we find that they are not working for us. And we make sure not only do we acknowledge successes that relate to that plan, but that we consistently and frequently acknowledge their successes. And that leads us to a student being able to get to the point where they are self-led, where they are truly liberated to achieve their own goals and navigate our campuses on their own. Micah, may we ask what of these, which is an area of strength for you?
I think number 4 would definitely be one, enhance home and school bond. Just like to get closer to my students as possible and know better, like how to like better serve them in the classroom and as well as beyond the classroom.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay. Fantastic.
And that's perfect. And I wanted to add, and this is correct too, where you see that act kind of go universally too, because like a counselor can do that, an intervention specialist, and so they're familiar with that, and when that's stressed, and it's like, okay, this is progressing and helpful, or it's like I'm not reaching anybody, and so then they understand like, oh, okay, that's not working, and can kind of strategize. It's like a commonality there. Okay, so for another crow, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Unknown author. We're really addressing that change and what we're trying to talk about here, right? We're trying to get the student on a different path. So kind of going more so on this RAD form.
Well, I think we should add, Danelle, that our sites currently use a checklist. In most of our sites use a checklist.
Correct.
And we are hoping that they will move to a request for additional data form or a RAD form in order to tell more of the story.
Yes. And this is just a part of that form where it really focuses on some of these key areas that we're going to go into further. But linked on the link is like the whole drafted up form, a copy of a site form that's used where it goes into a little bit more of the sections. But again, just focusing on these 3 areas of student strengths, staff concerns, and intervention strategies.
So a student's strengths is really the cornerstone of a successful SST. And I think a lot of teachers over time kind of look at it as a speed bump, and they kind of go over it without really being present. And the why behind it is that when you tell someone what they are good at, it boosts their confidence. Mm-hmm. It motivates them to want to try the next hardest thing that you're going to throw their way. It makes them feel included. It shows a value for diverse talents that not all students in your class are going to be strong in certain areas, but their strength is welcome and valued in the classroom. It's going to recognize effort over achievement, which is key to continuous improvement. And it's going to lead to a more positive attitude, not just towards learning and hard things, but
yeah, and this really helps too when you're actually in the SST meeting itself. And I know in the past when I've been a coordinator, it's just really helpful to kind of start there on a positive note and really address these key components instead of just going right away into maybe like a negative or like a concern, because then the student just shuts off and the parent's like, hey, nothing I haven't heard before. So it just helps just for the shaping of it.
We're going to show you, Micah, have you seen this video?
No, I haven't seen this video at all.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story first. I saw this video many years ago, and it doesn't matter how many times I see it, it still makes me want to cry. It's a really great video to really understand a strength mindset. The funny thing is the reason why this video has come up to the top recently is because I just bought this book down here called I Love It Here. And, you know, I'm constantly perusing Amazon for new books, and I'm like, wow, cool book, right? And so I go to read it and I look up the author, and, you know, we all have phones in our pockets. So I Google the author, and oh my God, I realized that it's the guy from Mr. Jensen. And I'm like, wow, like he goes on to do more work. So let me play this video first so you can kind of see his early years.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me though was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, hey, stop tapping. A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, Clint, you have to stop tapping. It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands. And so I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me and he yelled. And he said, Clint, stay after class. And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me. And I will never forget it. And so I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. And he walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, Clint, come here. I want to talk to you. And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, now I need you to know something. You're not in trouble, but I do have just one question that I have to ask you. And he said, have you ever thought about playing the drums? And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer. And from that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me. And he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
What do you think, Micah?
That was an amazing story. That was really amazing. It's
Remember that statement, being the best in the world and the best for the world. That is a game. That means everybody has value.
Exactly.
And we're going to meet you where you're at, and whatever you decide you want to do in this world, we're going to help you on that path. I mean, so he goes on to write that book. I love it here. And it talks about organizations and in a way that makes people not want to leave. And it's really interesting. He takes that same concept and he applies it to creating value in workplaces. It's really quite powerful. So what takes us to the concerns? The concerns are what we know as the what. So what is happening with the student academically, behaviorally, or socio-emotionally that is kind of coming up to the top. Are those things are we looking at the cultural relevance of them? Like, give you an example. We had a teacher who, wouldn't make eye contact, would not participate, or other cultural things like wearing a hood up. Just different kinds of things. When asked, you know that something is not right, but they're just too embarrassed to tell you. If it lets us know things, if there was trauma in their past, if something is going on with their health or their well-being, or something is developmentally off. This is another video, and I want to show you. So I have a picture. Micah, are you assigned to a high school or a middle school?
I'm at a middle school right now. I'm at Washington.
Oh, you're at Washington. Okay.
Yes.
So you're with a lot of fun people over there.
Yeah.
As a teacher, I'm going to show you that each marble in this picture represents, can you see it's not very full?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, it represents, each marble represents 1 week of time of influence that you have on a student. Not very many.
Yeah, pretty.
So if you wait until January, until the semester, to do something about a kid, you only have half those marbles left. Not a lot of time. So if you look at that relatively, this is how many marbles you have in middle school from start to finish. Okay. And then this is how many you have in high school. Big difference. Why am I coming out of the, do I need to turn off my thing? So we're going to watch this one. This too is an excellent video, but I just want you to know that you're going to start this school year off with only 36 marbles, and I want you to use them wisely. And here we go.
As a kid, I mastered the art of getting kicked out of foster homes. And the fact of the matter is I trusted no one. And looking back, I guess, how could I? From the time my parents left me, to the time another foster kid raped me, to the time I was bullied so bad, I tried to kill myself with a bottle of pills. So I'm sitting in the van, in the driveway of this next home, preparing to meet Rodney and Christine from Yukon, Oklahoma. He looks in my eyes and says, "Son, you can keep causing problems. You can keep trying to mess up. You can keep pushing us away. You can keep trying to get us to kick you out of here, but you've got to get it through your thick head, son. We don't see you as a problem. We see you as an opportunity." You see, every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. March 2015, Harvard's National Scientific Council on the Developing Child released this study saying, and I quote, "Every child who winds up doing well has had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult." My friend and mentor, Reggie Joyner from Atlanta, taught me to think about it this way. In this jar are 936 marbles. Each one of these marbles represents a single week from the birth of a kid until that kid turns 18 years old. You know, a 16-year-old, you got 104 marbles remaining. Right here, we are looking at time. In fact, you're looking at all the time or all of the weeks you have left to influence this kid, or this kid before they turn 18 and begin making critical life decisions without your presence. What matters isn't how much time you have left with a particular kid that you care about. What matters is what you do with that time left. I mean, consider how many weeks Rodney had left when he bailed me out of jail. 26. I was 6 months away from graduating high school. 26 weeks to get through my thick head, my bitterness, my anger, my distrust of adults, to get me to finally accept help. You see, it's not about how much time you have left with that kid you're thinking of. What matters is what we do with that time. If every kid truly is one caring adult, one Rodney away from being a success story, then the challenge is this. The difference between a statistic and a success story is you.
What'd you think?
That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Did you notice how the two videos are the same? It's all about the kid not feeling like they were a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were basically focusing on, like, the kid is, let's focus on his strengths. Let's see how we can better impact him and not show him that he's a negative in any aspect.
For sure. And so teachers in general understand strategies. They understand the how. They understand how to set clear expectations, classroom management, scaffolding, active learning strategy. There really isn't anything different to the equation than what's on here. That's it. It's just how well we do it, how well we deliver it. Are we consistent with it? And so this is the part we're not so worried about. Story, as it turns out, was crucial to our evolution more so than opposable thumbs. Opposable thumbs let us hang on. Story told us what to hang on to. And so this leads us to, how do we go from a good story to a great story? What are the students' strengths? And that checklist that our sites use, or those short emails that we write things like strengths. Student come, or in the SST itself, student comes to class. And in fact, many teachers struggle to come up with a strength when it shouldn't be a struggle. In fact, that student who comes to class, I was telling Danelle earlier that if she goes to class and I go to class, when we go to class, it looks differently. So just coming to class isn't a good enough story. I need to know what happens. What happens when you come to class? Is the student consistently arriving to classroom on time with the necessary materials required for learning, math or social studies? Does the student take out materials without prompting? Those are, the student comes to class and is ready to learn. That's important to me, for me to know. If the student comes to class but does not have any materials and does not engage at all, does not make eye contact, that's a different story. And that involves a different intervention. So we want to make sure that we go from good stories to great stories. Student is quiet to student is quiet and respectful each day in class. They pay attention by tracking the teacher with their eyes. There's a typo there. Their readiness to learn is apparent and provides a strong foundation to learn. We can work from that. That is a strength. That child has value in my class. And that, when I say that out loud in that SST or on that form, that child is going to hear it and they're going to feel it. Janelle, you want to do concerns?
Yeah, so that kind of was an illustration of the strength one that we talked about earlier, and then we went into concerns and kind of phrased it in a way you can easily just put, oh, what's the concern? No material, not prepared for my class, but to go into a great story and have more of the details and information and what really captures what's going on, and someone else can pick it up and know where to carry on from here. So a great story: the student consistently arrives to class with minimal or without the necessary materials required for learning. There is no evidence of borrowing materials from peers or use of class loaner system or follow through from home after inquiries and reminders. And so it's like, again, they're not using what resources are at hand for them and available. There seems to be like that. You were talking about that home visit and talking with home and working with home. And then I can see that okay, so when I try and attempt it, I'm going to have to maybe try a different approach or something there. And then just even with the reminders, and there's just more coming out of there. And then on the bottom again, does not complete assignments. You can be like, oh, they don't complete assignments. But again, student frequently fails to complete and turn in assignments on a weekly basis. This extends to homework, classwork, and long-term projects, impacting their overall academic performance and progress. The students' incomplete work affects their ability to grasp and reinforce key concepts taught in class, as well as their readiness for assessments, and student does not show up or accept help from others. So again, just having more information and detail.
We were going to practice. So we were going to take common strengths and concerns and then make them great stories. Do you
if someone hopefully ends up seeing this link and viewing it as well and sees this recording, just know, and if we had a bigger, this is something maybe to take time on and kind of practice on your own.
Micah, what year are you at Washington?
This is my 4th year at Washington, but this is my 2nd year as a ed specialist over there.
Okay. So you already know that you use the RAD form at Washington. we're trying to get the other sites to use it. Do you
Oh,
see?
okay. Because I was just looking at it, like I'm listening to you guys, and I like this presentation because it sometimes we do not get the whole picture of the student and their strengths and concerns. So this is like right now it's like giving me a great refresher, which is like I'm really appreciative of this.
We appreciate that, and we hope that we get like more of an opportunity to meet more with like teachers and kind of get this foundational like work with them, and like you said, a refresher and like.
Do you see how the story is so important?
Oh, it's extremely important. Every IEP is like, I can't just say no materials or comes to class on time. Like I have to give explanation. So like if the kid is there, well, yeah, you do come to class on time and you're prepared and you show me eye contact and you're ready to learn. That's the whole overall picture just shows on what they do in the classroom, you know? So
Yeah, I think when you give a good story, it's more synonymous with your problem. And when you give a great story, it's more synonymous with you have value and I want to help you.
yes, exactly. And that's like what I'm like, now that you guys mentioned it, like I'm definitely gonna take that good and great story back to when I'm doing with my team to make sure that we are writing great like, you know, IEPs.
And they have teachers are rich with information. They have it in their pockets.
Yes.
It just needs to be brought out.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So the SST cycle, Micah, as you know, it's cyclical. It goes around and around and around. And we find that this is one thing that we really want to emphasize, that it's a problem-solving team. And our job is to implement things to support the child until they can do those things on their own. And if they can't do them on their own, then we put supports in place, you know, for a longer period of time. But that we are committed to monitoring and adjusting that plan as time goes on and providing that feedback, because we too are invested in those outcomes. We are part of the students' team, right? It's like if you look at like a basketball team, you know, it's not that you're just helping a player like dribble better. You're invested in whether or not we win that game.
Exactly.
So if we can make the teachers understand that you too are part of the outcomes, you're invested in the outcome. The child wins, you win, we all win, right? For our optimistic closure today, we have a choice. You can share a rose, a thorn, or a bud. So a rose is something that you feel like is your takeaway from today. A thorn is something that you still find, based on the information, is going to be a challenge. And then a bud is something that you see as a potential for growth.
To be honest, I saw a rose. I saw a rose in everything that you guys did here today. I do believe that, like you said, yes, teachers, we do have a lot on our plate. But at the same time, we're here to help the students, you know? So if we can give that confidence to the student and show them, like, even in front of their parents or wherever they might be, or who's ever in that meeting, the SST meeting or IEP meeting, and show them that they are, you know, you can be confident and you do have qualities to bring to the classroom. It just looks a little different, you know?
Right.
So that's the biggest takeaway I had today. Like, not just because we can easily highlight the negatives of the student. Like, you know, I see 150 kids a day. I can highlight negatives on most of them, but to highlight the positives is only going to benefit me, and it's going to benefit that student in trying. So that's the one thing I liked about today.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, can you put the feedback form in the chat?
Yes.
Can you do that? Otherwise, I have to stop sharing.
Give me a second. I will do that.
Okay.
And thank you again for participating in this. And hopefully there's viewers who are watching this. But yeah, 1 second.
And then we want to let you know that we're, you know, if you ever have any questions or you need reminders or you want access to materials, always feel free to reach out to us. And that's our job, is to advocate for you and to support you in the work that you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And yeah, okay, so there's the link in the chat. And again, thank you, Micah, for participating and joining us. And teachers, if you happen, or any educator happen to see this, also just remember just your vital importance in this whole process and supporting the student and having those, takeaway moments from all of this. And I know you have a lot on your plate, but if you ever find the opportunity to help, especially in this SST process, even though that's like the beginning stages and you're later on, you're like, oh, I think a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, IEP, law and stuff and 504, we're gonna prioritize and show up to those, but these SSTs, but hopefully if you can find the right person and the team and serve your team and the committee and just help each other out and like kind of getting through this groundwork of a proper placement for a student. And thank you for listening.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much. Sorry, I was just filling out the feedback form.
That's okay, Micah.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And we can,
You
thank
too.
you. And we can stop recording.